that. So I think we only have a few more. And this particular one I am, I think I really want to ask is because now that you've sold me on arbitration, how does one go about selecting an arbitrator? Because like, okay, so in litigation, I mean, you just get whoever you get, right, at court. So that randomness kind of gives me the reassurance that it's going to be some, you know, impartial person. But now, you know, if I picked an arbitrator, my opponent's going to say, oh yeah, well, you picked them, so they're going to favor you, obviously, kind of thing. So then how do the parties go about selecting an arbitrator?
Okay, so first of all, it's important to know that in most jurisdictions, there are no rules about who can hold themselves out as an arbitrator, right? So in every jurisdiction in Canada, if you say, I am a lawyer, well, then what that means is that you are a member of your province's law society and you've passed whatever requirements are in place to become a member of that law society. And no one else can call themselves a lawyer. The same thing is true about certain other protections, like who can call themselves a barber, for example, right? You have to meet certain training requirements, but there's no rule about who can call themselves an arbitrator or a mediator. In most jurisdictions, in British Columbia, they actually have rules about that. But in Ontario, I believe they do not, right? So what that means is that my next door neighbor who delivers packages and keeps pigeons for some reason can call himself an arbitrator if he wishes to, and there's absolutely nothing stopping him from doing that, right?
Mm.
So when you're hiring somebody as an arbitrator, well, you would do an internet search, right? If you have a lawyer, your lawyer will doubtless know a handful of people who your lawyer thinks well of in terms of their work and their efficiency as an arbitrator, right? But if you don't have access to that kind of a resource, well, you can do a Google search, you know, for family law arbitrator plus the name of your city or town, and hopefully find somebody that way. But you know, you owe it to yourself to not just randomly, you know, put your finger on a spot in the yellow pages, right? So you ask around, right? You are entitled to window shop for arbitrators just the way you window shop for a lawyer, right? So you're allowed to ask questions like, what percentage of your arbitration practice involves family law issues? How long have you worked as a family law arbitrator? What is your view about the flexibility of process and procedural design to resolve arbitration disputes? So you can ask all of these questions, and you're allowed to interview an arbitrator before you say, I'm going to hire you, right? So look online. Ask people that you know, including any professionals that you know. Are there any arbitrators that you've heard of that you think particularly well of? When you find someone, don't just talk to one person, talk to a handful of people, go to their websites, you know, read about them, do a Google search, or even better, go to CanLii, that's the Canadian Legal Information Institute, and do a search for the name of the arbitrator, you know, because if you find a whole bunch of cases in which they've been overturned by a court on appeal, maybe you don't want to hire that person, right? So you're allowed to do all that stuff, okay? Now, if somebody says, well, I've spoken to Sally and I want to hire Sally, right? Look, like what I said before is about the core responsibilities of an arbitrator, right? Be unbiased and appear to be unbiased and provide a semblance of fundamental justice. Those are the only two things an arbitrator has to do, right? All provincial and territorial arbitration legislation will allow an arbitrator to be removed for bias. None of us want that, right? And so we have ethical obligations to tell you. So if your husband says, I really want to hire Sally, right? And your husband is a former co-worker of Sally or a friend of Sally's or used to date Sally. Well, the arbitrator has an obligation to let you know about that pre-existing relationship, right? So you're under no obligation to agree to hire an arbitrator that you don't want to hire unless the court says you will hire Sally or Francesca or Bob or whomever, right? So without an order saying you'll hire this person, you can choose anybody that you want, and you can always say no to whomever you want. But from my perspective, lawyer arbitrators take their obligation to be and remain unbiased very seriously. None of us want the embarrassment of having a decision or a retainer set aside because we were found to have been biased, right? I mean, that would be maybe not a death knell, but it would be horrifically embarrassing, right? Just on a personal and a professional level. And so you can rely on the arbitrator to disclose any previous relationship with that individual, right? And so on my website, I actually talk about how to hire me, right? And so what I really, really, really want is I want somebody to send me an email copied to the other side, right? So that the other side knows exactly what they have said to me, so that there's no confusion. Sometimes what I will do if I'm contacted by only one person is I'll say, okay, can you give me the other people's email addresses? And then I will reply to the person who contacts me and copy the email to everybody else, so that everybody who's involved in the dispute can see the communication that was given to me and can see my reply. And if it's a case where somebody phones me and I have a conversation with them, I tell them on the phone, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of the nature of your complaint. Like, you can tell me it's about parenting after separation, or it's about division of property, but don't give me your position and don't say, well, it's about parenting. I want sole custody because my husband's an alcoholic, right? Like, I don't want to hear that, right? And what I say, the moment that I realize that you're talking to me in an effort to retain me, is I say, well, just so you know, I'm going to let the other side know what you and I have talked about, so that we are as above board as we possibly can about everything. So that's how it works. And so from my perspective, you should have, as long as the arbitrator who's being proposed is a lawyer, because we are bound by our code of conduct and other professional obligations, it seems to me that you should feel a fairly high degree of confidence in the impartiality of a particular arbitrator, and rely on the arbitrator to voluntarily disclose any previous relationship they may have had with the other parties to your dispute. You know, I mean, it matters not to me who gives me a call and who says, I'd like to hire you, right? Oh, that's great, thanks very much, when you talk to the other side now, right? But just because they said pick me doesn't mean that I'm going to be biased, or that I'm somehow going to favor them. I think the only thing I can say apart from that is that when I think about people that do parenting assessments, quite often individuals and lawyers, you know, when they're talking about somebody who conducts, a psychologist who does parenting assessments, you often hear saying, well, I'm looking for an assessor who is pro-man or pro-woman, right? Or I want an assessor who's easy on relocation disputes, or something like that.
Yes.
And, you know, it is certainly true that every now and then I have run into a psychologist who has a palpable bias because of their professional inclinations or because of their personal history or something like that. But in general, those people don't get used a lot, right? Because their reputation as being pro this or pro that or easy on relocation becomes known, right? And so if you propose to me to hire a pro-dad parenting assessor and I'm acting for mom, I'm going to say no, right? And so it is possible, I guess what I'm saying is that it's possible for an arbitrator to be biased. In general, it's hard to know whether that's the case, that they have a particular leaning or a particular inclination about issues like parental alienation or child estrangement or resist or refuse dynamics and things like that. But you know, all you will ever hear about that is a rumor, right? Because arbitration decisions are private, right? So it's not like you can look up somebody's record on a particular issue. But an arbitrator over time might develop a reputation as being pro this and pro that, but you're never going to be in a position to be able to ascertain the truth of that. But you know, you will of course not agree to hire that person. So I think that's really all I can say about bias and the prospect of a tilt one way or the other.
That's really interesting. Well, actually, that is reassuring, because I think if you think about it and you're thinking, well, you know, as an arbitrator, your reputation is very important to you. So why would you want to throw it away by being biased?